Well, hi everyone. Today we are playing two tables at 3-6 no limit, and I'm joined once again by Rising Star StoxPoker member MBolt1. Today we're going to play 3-6 and really try to explain the differences. We made a video yesterday where we were playing 1-2 and we played very loose and aggressive, and today we're going to talk about how, surprisingly enough, you can take a more solid approach against the 3-6 guys and show some pretty nice profits that way. So we'll just discuss those strategies. With the 8-6 suited here, I'm less inclined because we know that this Mary guy is probably going to call this bet, and so we can just check it and try to see a flop with the 8-6 of hearts.
We have a hand that likes to see a flop, I think.
And check through like this, and with the king pairing, I like just potting it because it doesn't look like anybody has anything. And so I expect to take it down a pretty decent amount of time with just potting it. It looks like they've given up, so you're basically just looking for solid spots to try to take money away. But you don't need to go crazy with the raises and re-raises like you do in the isolate game that we play over at 1-2. So this guy, he has a folded big blind to steal of 92, and I think we can raise any 2 against that type of opponent. Don't you agree?
I agree.
Whoops. Don't mind us over here. And with the ace-5 suited, we'll just raise, and with the pocket 3s, raise on the button. Pretty standard stealing hands. And we'll just make probably a half-pot continuation bet with the 3s, just expecting him to, he's a shorter stack, we don't need to make a big bet. So we can get a little better price on our bluff here. And he quickly called, so that leads me to believe like a really weak king or a jack. And when he leads out now, we can just...
Yeah, I think we just give it away.
Yeah. I try not to bully shorter stack fish. Those are the definitely not the guys you want to be playing that way. And Pistol Pete here with a 41 VPIP looks to be pretty weak. He limps in pre-flop. 10-3 probably still a little optimistic to be isolating with that hand. Unlike 1-2 yesterday, where you can isolate all day long and expect to steal it uncontested a lot of the times, here against some of the better players, like Hydro seems to be a pretty solid player. We're going to get re-popped a lot.
Yes.
It's sort of like a re-steal situation.
I think it's kind of interesting the way you've got this set up too. Like, this left table is the table that I would sit at, but the right one is one that I would never sit at. So we can probably talk a little bit about playing all regulars, and we'll still find some interesting spots for the weaker ones.
Yeah, I like that. That's gonna be a good dynamic. Yeah, everybody. There really is no weak players on the table on the right, but jacks. This guy has a 13 attempt to steal, and
he plays a ton of tables too. So I think we can expect him to be really straightforward.
Okay, yeah. So you say we just call?
Yeah, I think a call is good.
Repop, he's probably not going to put in too much action with worse hand, and maybe we can... Here's a good spot to re-steal. It looks to me like a squeeze. So the question is, this is a pretty gnarly spot, is do we re-steal or do we call and check raise all in on some flops? What is your thought here?
Gosh, this is tough. I mean, I think they're both fine. Actually with not much history, at the table today, I actually don't hate calling, and let's just see a flop and see what happens.
Okay.
And here I think we're all in.
Yeah, here I don't think we have a choice. Yeah. I mean, if he has queens, kings, or aces, or flop to set, then...
Well, we still got out.
So be it.
And I think we're good now.
And here I think we're good, but the question is, do we check call and let him try to bluff us? Or do we, I mean, we can't really fire our is turning our hand into a bluff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the play is to check and probably check call. Well, and here I think, what do we just make half pot bet and try to get him to pay off, and play the board?
Yeah.
So maybe just a half pot bet and try to make him think that we're just trying to budge him off. You know, by overbetting that gets a little fishy. Guys at these limits will.
Mm-hmm. And queens.
No,
wow.
yeah. So we got off pretty easy there. He types in WTF.
Why didn't he bet the flop?
I don't know why he didn't bet the flop either. Actually, we could have stolen there. Both these guys are really tight with the blinds, so that was a little bit of a mistake for me to not steal with the 7-3. But sort of an interesting hand. I mean, on the turn there, his hand screamed like ace-king, so we're only giving him 6 outs, and we had to turn our hand into a bluff to bet. And then we also risk him raising us as a rebluff and not really knowing what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So ace-10 suited against an under the gun here. I think we can just fold.
Yeah, I think we can block against him.
I mean, the standard play for me with the jacks would have been to just shove or re-steal, but it was just such an interesting dynamic because we had a tight guy, and he was maybe squeezing but maybe not against another tight guy. So it was just one of those spots where it's like, well, what's going on here?
You know, I just really don't think that a 17-11 is making a lot of weak, crazy steals, you know, when he's got junk.
That's true.
But then we still have the same problem that there's a lot of flops that we don't like to see with jacks. So, you know, it's just a tough spot all around, any way you go about it.
Yeah, I agree. It was, it looks like we finally did get a guy with $400, which is likely to be a weakish player sitting in with less than a full buy-in. And also telling in that I don't think another good player would choose this table.
Yeah.
And so I think anybody that sits now is going to be weak. Either that or he's a good player that needs to watch our games. one of the game selection videos on StoxPoker.
Yeah, for everybody out there, if the highest VPIP at the table is 19, don't sit.
Yeah, that's a good thing. These guys actually, I personally, and I know it's probably a unique case, but I personally wouldn't mind sitting here, and the reason why is because they're actually too tight.
Yeah,
and
well,
I think I can really.
You're going to win a lot of, you know, $50 pots.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly, but also you can really attack them and make them punish them. So I'm going to do a play here with the ace-9 suited and just make a little min raise. And I kind of like this play. It kind of, rather than just calling, it sort of puts the onus back on them to flop a hand as opposed to me being out of position having to flop a hand. Then I generally bet just a little more than half pot. And he quickly calls, so the play for me is to check raise all in on a flop like this.
I love the check raise.
Because I think he's going to feel his hand is vulnerable because he probably has a weak made hand, and he's going to feel the need to protect it. And now I just put all the money in.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're ahead like a lot, and I think he calls with a lot.
So we improved the top two and get a stack.
And necessary.
Interesting to see if we needed to. And we'll find out what he had here in a second. No, I guess he had queen 8, so he just had a straight draw.
Yeah.
So that's pretty nice. And we may be getting stolen from, but so be it. With a jack 8 suited this deep, I'd like to float and usually put moves on lots of flops. This is going to be a good one, I think, to put a move on because we're going to represent a king, which he's unlikely to have, or a big draw ourselves. And that deep, he's going to have a hard time continuing with the hand, so I like to put a little pressure on him here. So now is it interesting, and did he decide to not put action in with his big draw because we were deep? So should I fire again? Because I mean, it's got to be about the scariest card in the deck to him if he has a hand like king queen.
I really wouldn't put him on diamonds.
Okay, so maybe 175.
Yeah.
And fire again, and the tricky part is if he has ace-king with like the ace of diamonds, he may not go anywhere. But at the same time, I mean, every draw came in and we sort of represented like a big hand or a big draw. And, you know, if he had that draw and just called with the intention of appealing for it, then so be it. But I think this works often enough, this type of bet.
Yeah.
You know, only needs to work, what, a little over a third of the time. I don't know how the exact math, but I don't think it needs to work too often. And
well, you know, we're slightly deep, but I don't think that we're so deep that he's going to be flat calling raises with a big draw. I think that he probably still wants to get it in.
Yeah, I would think a big, you know, flush draw or something. Sure. Oh,
I thought we were going to get to say choo-choo.
It'd be nice to take a choo-choo buy-in, wouldn't it?
That's our. If this video is a success, if we get one of his.
If we get one of his.
Yeah.
Actually, I know our boy M's a kid here. We chat a little bit on Instant Messenger, so I'll certainly let him know he's in this video and let him know we were coming after his choo-choo buy-in. And considering he is tight, I'll just raise the queen 5 and just hopefully steal it often enough.
I mean, I really think against a lot of guys, it just doesn't matter what you have. You know, you can do that and then check fold the flop, and it's still going to be profitable.
Yeah, that's a good point. And when the queen deuce suited here, I say we just limp in.
The guy's so short, you know, you don't really want to raise it.
And now we just have to fold.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think I'm pretty sure he doubles or he leaves. Imza Kid leaves when he gets to 30 blinds. So he's hanging in there with $164. He's right on the cusp. Always fun to come after the short stackers. And with the 7s here, just a pretty standard open. I like making it a little less, especially when stacks are deep. Pre-flop, because when I do get re-raised, I like to be able to call.
Yeah.
Have less money to call in order to try to win their stack. And with the 7s here in position, I probably am going to take a little bit. I'm not going to fight really hard post-flop. I'm pretty much going to play fit or fold, try to flop a set. There are going to be flops he's going to give up on. There are going to be times when, you know, like I said, he either gives up or there's just opportunity to rep a lot on the flop and try to take it away later. But in general, I do just call and then.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think that 100 blinds deep, for sure. You know, it's a little questionable about this guy because I think that his range is a lot wider than, you know, aces and kings, ace-king.
Yeah. But which also, you know, leaves opportunity where he's not always going to continuation bet the.
Well, I mean, I think it's a no-brainer with $800 effective stacks. Like, you know, for sure, we're never folding that.
100 big blinds, it does get a little dicey because there are guys that c-bet every flop, and they're just really tough to play against even in position, and you're going to fold the winner a lot. So sometimes I like just cutting my losses and folding to the re-raise.
What I'm looking for in the 3-bet pots is, you know, against someone like him, I'm looking, and you can tell me if you agree or not, but for more like good suited connector hands where we can flop a lot of draws, where we can shove and we probably have some fold equity because we know that its range is relatively wide. Whereas, you know, if he was, say, you know, a 16-12, we would want to call with a lot of pairs because we almost certainly have set odds when we flop it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes some good sense as well. And the ace-queen here is just a pretty standard continuation bet. You know, I like to make those around 2/3 to 3/4 of the pot, and we're lucky enough to take it down. 3-6 maybe the last limit you can profitably. I shouldn't say this for sure, but without tremendous post-flop skills, maybe the last limit you can play this tight, like 17-14, 17-12, 16-10, and expect to make money, and not just be like a pretty much break-even player. I think that's just a little too tight and a little too, good players just know a little bit about what's going on, a little bit too much about what's going on against these type of opponents. 16-10. I definitely don't think you need to be loose and crazy to beat the high stakes games. You can play tight and solid, and that was sort of the premise of this video. But I think this just goes a little too tight to really expect to beat anything much more than about 3-6. But hey, I mean, beating 3-6 is a good accomplishment. So.
Well, I think at this level, people get really good at recognizing the spots to put you to a decision, whereas at lower levels, that's not really the case. And the solid players here are willing to do that. They're willing to just stick their stack in, regardless of what they have, because they don't think you can call.
Right, I agree. And here we smothered the flop so hard, and he has a little bit of short stack. I was going to try to take a check raise line just because I think he's folding to the c-bet so often. And so I was just looking to try to get a little money. But now we need to start protecting our hand because the flush draw did come in. And so we don't want to keep giving him free cards. And also we do need to work on getting the money in. And with 10-8 suited, I like opening here under the gun. It's slightly loose, but the players that we're against shouldn't be repopping us too much. So I feel like I can profitably open with that under the gun. And with a 10-8, my line generally is to sort of see what develops, but to check call.
Yeah, I don't like betting.
And probably check call again and check fold the river would be my plan at this point. And now we'll check call and just assume he would have bet any queen or, any flush draw early in the hand, so I would interpret that as a bluff and just try to pick off the bluff.
The way I look at it, too, at that point in the hand is, all we're really going to be calling, even though the board it wasn't that great for us at the end, all we're calling is what we would have c-bet anyways. So,
exactly.
We're getting the showdown for the same price.
Yeah.
And we're good a lot.
And this way, he had 7-4. We could have maybe got a bet or two from a hand like that. And so the A7, we just decided to pretty much give up on it here. We could have bet that flop. It was dry enough to where he wasn't going to have a hand too often. And that could have ultimately been best, but checking and just giving up is fine too. So sort of an odd raise size. Makes me want to attack it, but also I think it's probably best just to get out of his way here. He only folds the flop at 25%. So this is the type of guy where it's just going to be hard to push off a hand, and it's better just to, probably out of position he folds a lot more, and in position he calls probably almost all the time based on these numbers. So. So you've recently gone from, not too long ago, from micro stakes and now are up playing these limits yourself. What have you found to be the biggest difference you think in getting?
It's post-flop play for sure. You just have to recognize the spots to make moves and recognize the spots that somebody's likely to be making a move against you. Pre-flop is still pretty standard. There's more 3-betting, but other than that, it's just all post-flop.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people, they'll want to get in more aggressive modes, and they will start 3-betting a lot more pre-flop and think that's the way to do it. But players at these limits are going to adjust, and they're going to punish you. And if you're not reading the hands well, you're going to get destroyed. You can't just run over these.
Well, that's the thing. Players at this limit, if you start 3-betting too frequently, if they feel like you're getting out of line, they're just going to start 4-betting with anything, and that really puts you in a tricky spot. You don't want to stick your whole stack in with whatever junk you're 3-betting. So, people are just capable of a whole lot more, and they're a lot better at telling what you're doing. Whereas at the lower limits, it's just kind of, I've got a good hand, I think I'll play it.
Seems to be a pretty fair assessment. I think at 3-6, my numbers tend to be more around the like 23, 24, 20 range. So, 24 VPIP, 20 pre-flop raise. And I'm really just, it's more or less a timed aggression, like we had with the Jack-8 suited. Well, if you're doing that every hand, he's just going to stick his money in with his ace-king. He's not going to give you credit. And if you aren't doing it enough, he can fold ace-king initially to your flop raise because he knows you're on a humongous draw or a set. So it's more or less.
Well, you have to let people win some pots. You just, it's just, foolish to try to win every pot. You sometimes you just need to give it to them. Like you almost just want them to take it because it just really makes them feel a little bit better about what's going on, and I think it's good for your image.
Yeah, I agree. I like to approach it from a more solid standpoint and work on timing bluffs. And sometimes you get a nitty image from that. At the higher stakes, I'm perceived as more of a nitty player. But I think in reality, if they saw some of the moves that's going on against them, they may not think that. But it's just a move here and a move there, and it really adds up because you can win a nice pot like we showed with the Jack-8. Turned out to be a pretty decent pot to pick off of with air. And it's that timed aggression that allows you to win that pot.
And it's, there's just so much value in it because, the moves that you're making work a much higher percentage of the time than if you're making them all the time, So they're just much more valuable.
I agree with that. We have run into a little bit of a coldish streak with the cards, and we haven't really been too involved with 3-betting, so we might toss in a suited connector, toss in some hands to 3-bet, and just keep these guys on their toes.
Yeah, I was going to suggest, firing a 3-bet with that Queen-8 suited and just try to play a pot.
And so I'm going to take the same concept with the 7s as I am with the Ace-Jack, and then I want to be able to call the re-raise. So I'm going to make a smallish raise here, and also these guys are somewhat tight in the blinds, it appears anyway, with the sample we have, and so you don't need to risk 4 times the big blind to steal.
Could you talk a little bit about what determines your raise size? I mean, I'm pretty much from everywhere. I just do 3x if I'm first in.
There's a lot of different factors. For one, there's some guys I almost feel that have caught on to the 3 times raise, and why I make the 3 times raise, which I explained as I like to call the re-raise, and they know I'm on a weakish sort of medium strength hand like that. So sometimes I'll always make it 4 against them, and then maybe go back to 3, stuff like that. And that's against the more regular opponents. But in general, I like to raise just 3 times from the first couple of positions, just because I'm going to get floated a lot. And
you want to play smaller pots.
I want to play smaller pots out of position. I also make it 3 times when the blinds are tight, just because I don't need to risk that much. I like to make it 4, even 5 times or more against weaker opponents, and especially in position because I want to play bigger pots. Trying to think of all the other times I make it more. Sometimes stack sizes, make it more just to get more money in when I have a really strong hand, just because I want to grow the pot, and you can't get it in on 3 streets without swelling it at every opportunity.
I think in squeeze situations too from the blinds, I remember at 1-2 just noticing a huge difference in making it like 12 when somebody limps from the blinds and making it 16. I mean, you get like seriously 2 or 3 times the amount of folds.
Really?
Yeah. It's just not even close.
And I talked about that in a previous video, and I used to just add 1 time for the limper. So if I would normally raise it to say 6 in a 1-2 game, if there was a limper I would make it 8, and now I start to make it like 12 because it either works more or they're going to have to play a pot, especially when you're in position and you're making these isolation plays. They're going to be having to play an even bigger pot out of position against you, and that's just also not going to be profitable. So it's almost like it serves dual purpose and both being beneficial to you.
Well, it's more difficult for them too to try to like float you on the flop, because the bet is so much bigger, and that matters to a lot of the players. The size of the bet that they have to call. They're not making the move just because they think I'm going to float once here regardless of what he bets. They're like, oh, $60, that's a lot of money, whereas opposed to like maybe they'll call 30.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, if you get the feeling that a guy is floating you with a wide range on the flop, a lot of times I'll just pot it, and it makes it that much more difficult, for them to make a move. Like you said, it becomes, more of a commitment to them, and sometimes they're just like, I don't want to make that huge raise, and so they just give it away. And at the same time, you're betting pot on monsters where you want them to, when you want action as well. So it's a nice balance. So you're not being read for just, oh, well, he's making that pot bet because he doesn't want me to float him, so all I need to do is just fight back and he's done. So at this game, it's, you're more or less sort of massaging the situations, and
well, it's really important to be aware of your own image, I think, and how the people perceive you, because you need to adjust your play to that. And I think that's just absolutely huge for moving up in limits.
Ace-3 suited, I agree with you and Bolt. The ace-3 suited, I raise under the gun, which is close for me, but I generally do raise ace suited. And since we have a pair, and it's unlikely that this is the type of flop that's going to help their hand, I generally see bet into two opponents here.
Even bad players, maybe they don't realize it, but they give you more credit when you're betting into multiple people on king rag flops.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I think we'll just repop for value with the ace-king suited. It's just so strong. And with the ace-3, I think at this point we can give up. I mean, this could have easily made him 2-pair. He could be slow playing a set. He could be on a hand like king-10 where, he's going to give up maybe if I fire the second barrel, maybe. But I tend to not get overly involved. A lot of guys, they're just like, oh, I'm reading him for king-10. I'm going to fire 3 streets. He can't call. But you know what? They wake up a lot of times and do call you. And also, king-jack is very much with his range. You could be slow playing a set. There's just, you don't need to get involved in every pot like we talked about before. So we can see Mary, he's only at 28. It seems like he's limped in every pot. I would expected to see like 70. Maybe I'm missing something.
Well, he makes up with it for his tightness with his aggression.
The 10-7 suited we haven't squeezed in a bit, and so it should make me want to lean towards doing it, but I think this is a good hand to just float.
I like his float, and there's a lot of good things that can happen for us on the flop.
Yeah, and we're in position, so we can steal a lot of pots when it just gets checked to us.
I think that at this point, if we had total junk there, I would like a squeeze.
Yeah, as sort of an image play. And we are somewhat deep with Adam, so he's going to need a really strong hand to continue. Sometimes I would float here with the gut shot. I prefer to do it on a dryer flop where I know my 8 is good when I do hit it. But here I think folding is the play. And he did bet into multiple people, which, you know, a lot of guys, they just won't go broke with ace queen, ace king there, and maybe correctly so, seeing as we are somewhat deep with him.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I will, you know, just call and try to steal later. And there is an argument for the flush draw, for calling with the flush draw, because you can maybe rep the hearts later in the hand. But, you know, I think the prudent play is just to stay out of it.
Well, when he bets into 3 people, I just really don't think he's going anywhere.
Yeah, and when he does, the likelihood of set goes up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not always going to be ace queen and ace jack and ace king. And the way he's betting this, I would read him for, at worst, ace queen. I don't think he bets there ace king, ace jack. I think he lets the free card come and goes for value on the river, on safe rivers, or calls a river bet from pot hunter if pot hunter leads out on the river. That would be what I would read him for. So when he bets again with the ace queen, I could be wrong, but or with the queen on the turn, I could be wrong, but I'm reading him for at least ace queen there.
It's definitely a huge hand.
And it would make sense given all of his actions, given his tightness and all that. So this Rimsky seems to be sort of tight passive. 12-4 at this point. So King Jack is a hand I open with under the gun. 6 max, I think. I haven't looked at the performance of that hand under the gun for me, but I'm pretty sure it's profitable, at least in the right circumstances. And so we get squeezed here. You know, this is a loose aggressive guy. We haven't made a play, but we are deep, and we did raise under the gun, so I think the number of times he's squeezing goes down.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to give it to him. And with the king queen here against Adam, I like just calling with the stack sizes, because if I 3-bet, we're building a big pot that doesn't really want action for stacks unless it flops, you know, top 2 or something.
Yeah.
And so now I'm just going to take a more passive line, and I like just check calling, and maybe he'll decide he wants to fire 3 barrels or something, and some of those times he's going to have it, but I'm not getting away from it. I mean, I haven't repped my hand as being very strong at this point, so I'm just going to continue to just try and pick off bluffs and realize the risk of giving a free card is probably small, because it's 2 or 3 outs when we're ahead in general, you know, if he has a pocket pair or has an ace.
I mean, when you look weak by check calling, people bluff a lot. Like, you know.
At these stakes, for sure, yeah. So we're just going to call again. And now we have an interesting decision, because we did make top 2. And,
I like a check raise all in.
You like check raise all in?
I think he's got like ace king. Maybe.
The problem is, what would he call a check raise all in? I feel like we should just go for value. That's my only problem, is I feel like he's going to check back a lot of weak kings. We do lose in that. Well, I just like leading out. Is that okay with you? So I feel like just leading out and hope he makes the crying call with like king jack or ace king, and we get raised, oh boy. I'm wondering how often he would put a move here.
I think almost never.
So do you think we can fold to a river shove? I was going to say the downside in that play is that we didn't get the 3 barrels from him, but the upside is that he is tight. He's unlikely to fire the 3 barrels, and we want to get the call from king jack ace king. So I don't hate either line. I feel like a little bit indifferent to which one. What do you think you liked there?
Well, I don't know. I'm on a little bit of monkey tilt right now, so I just want to get the whole stack in there.
The problem to me with the check raise all in is it's not a nuts type hand, and so like I wouldn't mind check raising all in like a set there and playing a set that way, because we can get looked up by his king queen or his lower set or whatever. But I feel like when we check raise all in there with king queen, he's almost never going to call a hand with a worse hand than top 2, in my opinion, unless he sees us as somebody that's capable of making that. But we can't really represent a busted draw at any point and maybe have him think that we're making a move. It clearly looks like we're check raising for value, and I just don't think he's ever calling with worse than top 2. And that's sort of my criteria for the check raise all in, is it's either going to be a big bluff or it's going to be the absolute nuts.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what your thoughts on that.
My thought is that, say we check and he bets. By then the pot's big enough that I think that a lot of people are going to have a hard time folding an ace-ace, ace-king type of hand. I don't know.
And you know, I think at a lower limit, I would agree with that statement, but I don't think this particular opponent. I mean, I do have a little advantage in my commentating here over you because I have played thousands of hands with this guy. So I don't think he's capable of making that call. But, you know, it's debatable, and anytime, you know, 2 good players debating about something, it's clearly close. So I think it's safe to say that that's probably the case in this spot.
Yeah, we'll assume that you're right, though.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but like I said, I think I have an advantage in this situation in commentating, in that I have played a lot with this opponent, and I don't feel he could make that call with an ace-king or ace-ace. So a couple of junky hands here with the Jack Rag. I played against a guy named Jack Rag a lot at the lower limits. Thought that was kind of a funny name. And we get a guy that sits around 509.55. So this is this is probably a guy that just sat down with his bankroll. Maybe he just did good in a tournament, got 509.55 for his win, and just plopped it all down. That's such an odd number. So let's just start by kind of testing him out. We have a decent kind of hand.
I think that there's probably less than a 5% chance that he typed that in.
Yeah, that's like, do you want to sit down with $200 or your full bankroll? Full bankroll, he clicks. I know we're getting, for your lag style, we're folding these. You just want to come after these guys.
I'm a nit.
You're a nit, huh?
Yeah.
That'll be the day. It's you know, I really think that a tight approach is pretty good at these type of limits. Although with 3 tightish guys, I'm always torn, because you get these tight guys and you go, well, they probably can't withstand a lot of heat because they're tight. They don't like to put their money in without a very strong hand. But at the same time, they're also more likely to have a strong hand because they're tight and they're raising. So, you know, it's like, do you come after them or do you just give them credit?
Well, see, I think that the difference is that at the lower limits, a lot of the moves that you make are pre-flop, which, you know, supports a more lag style. Whereas at, you know, like 3-6, you're going to play fewer hands, but you're going to look for more spots to make moves post-flop. And, you know, so you're going to be more lag post-flop and a little tighter pre-flop.
Yeah, that's exactly what I feel. And the 5-8 suited here, this is slightly loose, but again, this button is not the type that's just going to be blasting away, trying to, you know, re-steal on me too often. So, and I actually am, sometimes when I make a decision to raise, I ask myself, okay, is this guy, if he re-raises me, what am I going to do? And in that case, if Pot Hunter had re-raised me, I was going to 4-bet. And I feel like it hasn't gotten to the point where he's starting to get on my nerve, but I feel like he's the type that might. And I like to 4-bet him sooner rather than later, because a lot of guys they'll get relentlessly 3-bet by a guy, and they're like, all right, you know, I need to 4-bet this guy and let him show. Show him that I'm not just going to lay down to him. But the problem is the more he 3-bets you, the more likely he is to have a hand, because he knows that he's been 3-betting you a lot, and he knows you're ready to fight back, probably. And now your 4-bet's even less likely to work. So I like to just throw it back in their face as soon as possible and just tell them, hey, right away.
Yeah, you need to show him who's boss quickly.
Exactly, and not have him think that, I'm doing that, and him think he can shove 7s profitably on me as a 5-bet shove and expect me to fold on my 4-bet. So I don't want him to get that feeling that I'm ready to fight back, so I generally like to fight back sooner rather than later. Unless I go on monkey tilt, then I just go, okay, buddy, I'm 4-betting you.
Yeah. The next video after my session this morning is going to be UB blackjack.
It didn't go too well, huh?
No, it was pretty bad, but it goes like that sometimes.
Yeah.
And you got like a case of beer in the fridge, so I'm good.
Sometimes that isn't such a bad option after some tough sessions, is it?
Well, a lot of times it's just way cheaper to, go do something else that's fun than to sit at the table and, lose $500 an hour.
Yeah, you know what? I get crap for it too, because sometimes I'm just like, screw it, man, I'm out of here. I'm spending $5,000 an hour at the tables here by playing. I'm running so bad. And I'll generally hear from, probably people a lot smarter than me telling me, hey, it's all EV, I mean, you should just keep sitting in there and playing, and it's, it's going to turn around. And I'm just like, you don't understand. It's just not my day. And it's funny, I reading from Doyle Brunson, he said he's a big believer in streaks, and sometimes he's just like, I don't care what kind of edge I have on this guy. I'm not beating him tonight. And obviously, math is going to prove that to be an illogical statement, but I don't know. Maybe there's like a poker god out there.
The thing that you can factor in, though, is, I think that everyone probably tilts to some degree, whether you realize you're doing it or not. Sometimes when it's going really bad for a long time, you're not playing your best, and you're just not capable of doing it. And it's best to go do something else for a while.
And I agree with that. And to add on to that, sometimes your image just gets so bad that your game doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
Because these guys sometimes they're just like, dude, this guy, I know I do it. I watch a guy sometimes get beat up so bad, I'm like, this guy just doesn't have it. I'm raising him. Like, he's not hitting the flops tonight. I'm just raising him. And I do it. And so sometimes it just gets so bad, people they just don't give up on you. Or I've had guys that call like gut shots all in just because they feel hot that night, So it's like,
I mean, I've had twice this year where I was in the middle of a session and decided that I need to start playing 100 VPIP because I'm just flopping the nuts like 50% of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you just want to get in there and give yourself every chance to keep flopping the nuts. It's kind of an interesting thing, and if Stocks Trader's laughing at this, if he's watching this, he's going to be laughing because he's going to be like, you idiots. It's all EV, trust me, I did this for a living, I know what's going on, but the bottom line is, if you're not feeling you're not playing your best, then your EV and your expectation and all that good stuff goes out the window because you have no EV when you're playing your C game against good opponents.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just get out of there. And also, if you're gotten to the point where you just feel doomed and you feel like they're going to flop the nuts every time and you're not, then, even if it's not tilt, you're just not thinking correctly. And you're assigning them ranges that aren't realistic. Like, if a guy puts a move on you on the flop and I'm running bad, my range is like, this guy has the nuts every time, rather than his range really being like air 20%, top 2 20%, flush draw 40%, blah, 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 and then making correct assumptions based on that. It just becomes, oh, this guy has it, I'm out.
I think that the second that you start to get emotional at any point, it's time to leave the tables. Even if you still think you're playing your best, you're probably not,
Yeah, I would agree with that. So
I like a fold.
Yeah, I like a fold here. It's a pretty easy fold, in fact. I see guys, even at high stakes, they put in calls there, good players, and I think they're wrong, and I challenge them on that all day long. These guys, they'll put in these calls out of position with pocket tens in a hand that doesn't flop well too often, and it's just wrong. When a guy raises under the gun, another guy re-raises, unless their ranges are so wide that the one guy's like, say, a 40-30 and the other guy's similar, it's not going to be profitable to do anything but fold. So with the ace-6, we are wrapping up the video here. So I was getting into 4-bet mode with this guy, but considering I'm not going to be able to use that image for him, and it's pretty neutral EV in a bubble, I'll just let it go.
Yeah, I mean, like, what are you going to do with your tens here? You know, you get like a dream flop.
Hope he goes all in and then fist pump and call. Maybe I might go into the mirror and practice my fist pump right before the timer goes down, and then I'll fist pump and for good and then call. So it looks like we managed to win a few bucks here, huh?
Yeah.
Unless I can donk it all off in the last
orbit
5 minutes.
Let me click, it'll happen.
Oh no. You definitely need to drink then. If that's the perception right now, you just keep sucking back on those Coronas. So far, when we do these sort of dual commentary videos here at StoxPoker, no matter who they may be with, they're getting really good feedback. So I'll be interested to hear what you guys think. Let me know what kind of feedback. It seems to be a good way to hash things out, and from your guys' perspective, as a way to learn. So let me know in the forums, and M. Bolt and I will keep our eye on the corresponding thread and get back to you guys. With the Queen-5 suited, it's an unlikely flop to have hit him, and here he donks out, and I like
calling and raising the turn.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. To me, it's just a weak hand almost all the time. We would have preferred an overcard, but I still think we can do it profitably. So yeah, let's just make it about 180.
Yeah.
190, something like that.
Yeah.
And, what's he going to do with pocket sevens now? What's he even going to do with ace-9? I mean...
Well, a lot of this is just total error, too. When people just donk into you like that, I mean...
I thought calling raising with my first turn, you took the words right out of my mouth, and I think that's just a really poor play. I was going to say a really good play, but... to me, I don't know what this could be. I mean, would he ever slow play aces pre-flop? I mean, obviously there's nothing we can do because he's committed himself. But I don't understand what that can be, other than he had pocket sixes and then turned to 6, and sometimes that happens. I can't imagine he would...
He's not going to lead out with a 2. He's not going to lead out with a boat.
Yeah. I mean, he could, but... I don't know anything about this guy. I mean, some guys will lead out with pocket 9s there, and sometimes I do too. But that, to me, for the record, don't lose heart in making that play based on that result, because I'm telling you that play almost never fails. I was like stunned there when he raised, just because he's just wrapped such a sort of whatever hand, and
I mean, I just think that more often than not, when they take that line, it's because they want you to fold, Yeah. That's what they're wanting.
Yeah. Maybe they call it ace-jack, and they're like, gosh dang it, I didn't flop anything, and they're leading out, and then they think I might be on a weak hand by calling, and so they lead again or something, and then when you make that big raise, they have to recommit themselves all in, so they literally have to ask myself, am I going with this hand? And for him to have a hand that he felt that was good enough to go with 150 blinds deep was I'm telling you, 2% was going to happen. Like, that play is like just money in the bank, and I am really shocked that didn't work. But, you know, that 2% does happen.
Well, we don't know anything about this player either. I mean...
Yeah, maybe he thought ace-9 was the absolute nuts there. He just
possible.
Like, yeah. But against any sort of medium player, against a good player, they might be reshoving because they know that your line kind of doesn't rep a whole lot either. But usually they don't think that deep at these limits, so that play is usually a fail-safe. So anyway, we look forward to your guys' comments. Is there anything you want to add, Bolt?
Hope you enjoyed it.
All right. Well, until next time, we'll see you guys.